Christmas Day, 2014. 77 million PlayStation users wake up to new consoles and games under the tree. They power on their systems, ready to play, and nothing works. Not for them, not for anyone. The entire PlayStation network is dead. Across the world, Xbox Live goes down too. And the people responsible are a group of teenagers sitting in their bedrooms, laughing at the chaos they have created. This is the story of how kids with laptops held the gaming world hostage on the biggest day of the year, and how they almost got away with it completely. But this was not a server crash or some technical glitch. This was a deliberate attack, and it was massive. We are talking about simultaneous takedowns of two of the largest gaming networks on the planet. PlayStation Network, Xbox Live. Both crippled, both on Christmas. The timing was not an accident. It was calculated to cause maximum damage and maximum attention. While millions of gamers sat frustrated in front of useless screens, the attackers were broadcasting their victory on Twitter, taunting Sony and Microsoft, and daring anyone to stop them. Sony's customer support lines were overwhelmed within hours. Wait times stretched to 3, 4, 5 hours. Parents who had spent hundreds of dollars on PlayStation 4 consoles could not explain to their kids why the brand new system did not work. Microsoft was in the same boat. Their social media accounts were flooded with angry customers demanding answers. And the companies had no good explanation to give. Admitting you are under attack makes you look weak, but pretending it is a technical issue makes you look incompetent. The question everyone was asking, who could pull off something like this? And more importantly, why? The group behind this called themselves Lizard Squad, not a sophisticated crime syndicate, not a nation-state operation, just a loose collective of hackers, most of them teenagers, spread across different countries. The core members included a 17-year-old from Finland named Julius Kivimaki, known online as Z-Kill, and a 22-year-old from the UK named Vinny Omari. Several others have never been publicly identified. These were not criminal masterminds with years of training. They were kids who had figured out how to weaponize the internet. Kivimaki was particularly notorious. In hacker circles, he was already known before Lizard Squad. He had been active in underground forums since he was 15. Credit card fraud, swatting attacks, where he called in fake emergencies to get SWAT teams sent to people's houses, harassment campaigns. He was not some misunderstood genius. He was a sociopath with a keyboard, and he had found others just like him. But here is what made them different from typical hackers. They did not want your credit card information. They did not want to steal data or hold systems for ransom. They wanted chaos. Pure, visible, undeniable chaos. They wanted everyone to know they caused it. Traditional hackers operate in the shadows. They stay anonymous. They cover their tracks. Lizard Squad did the opposite. They had a Twitter account with thousands of followers. They did interviews with journalists. They live-streamed themselves during attacks. They wanted fame more than money, and that made them unpredictable, dangerous in a different way. Lizard Squad had been warming up for months. Earlier in 2014, they had knocked out smaller targets, gaming servers, and individual streamers. In August, they went after Twitch streamer James Varga, known as Phantom Lord, taking down his stream repeatedly during a League of Legends match. Then they escalated. They hit the game servers for League of Legends itself, and millions of players disconnected simultaneously. Riot Games, the developer, had to issue statements apologizing for outages they could not control. But the attack that really put Lizard Squad on the map happened in late August. They hacked into Sony's online entertainment division and posted bomb threats against American Airlines Flight 61, which was carrying John Smedley, president of Sony Online Entertainment, from Dallas to San Diego. The plane was diverted, fighter jets were scrambled, and the FBI got involved. It was a federal crime, and Lizard Squad bragged about it on Twitter. They had even briefly taken down Malaysia Airlines' website just weeks after Flight 370 went missing. A move that was as tasteless as it was attention-grabbing. Each attack was a proof of concept. Each one refined their methods, and each one taught them how far they could push before someone pushed back. By December, they were ready for something bigger, something that would make headlines worldwide, something nobody could ignore. Their weapon of choice was a distributed denial of service attack. This was a distributed denial of service, and it was simple in concept. Imagine a restaurant that can serve 100 people at a time. Now imagine 10,000 people show up at once, all demanding service simultaneously. The restaurant cannot function. It collapses under the weight. That is what Lizard Squad did to PlayStation Network and Xbox Live. They did not hack into the systems. They did not need to. They simply flooded them with so much traffic, so many connection requests from compromised devices around the world, that the servers could not process legitimate users anymore. But where did they get 10,000 devices to flood the servers? This is where it gets darker. Lizard Squad had built a botnet, a network of infected computers, routers, even internet-connected cameras and DVRs that they controlled remotely without the owners knowing. Thousands of devices, maybe tens of thousands, all over the world. In homes, in offices, in schools. Each one sitting there, doing its normal job, while also secretly waiting for commands from Lizard Squad. When the attack began on Christmas morning, all those devices activated simultaneously, like sleeper agents waking up. They started sending connection requests to PlayStation Network servers. Millions of requests, overwhelming the authentication systems, the login servers, the matchmaking services, everything that made online gaming possible. And because the requests were coming from legitimate devices, from real IP addresses all over the world, Sony could not just block them. There was no single source to cut off. It was death by 1,000 cuts. In this case, it was death by 1,000,000 connection requests. The networks buckled, then they crashed. And on Christmas morning, they stayed down. PlayStation Network went dark first, around 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Early morning in the US, but daytime in Europe, where millions of gamers were already trying to log into their new consoles. Xbox Live followed a few hours later. Lizard Squad immediately took credit on Twitter. They posted screenshots of network status pages showing everything offline. They taunted Sony and Microsoft directly. One tweet read, "You're welcome." Another said, "Merry Christmas." The gaming community was in chaos. Reddit exploded with theories. Was it really a distributed denial of service attack? Was it something worse? Had user data been compromised? Sony and Microsoft stayed silent for hours, which only fueled speculation. Meanwhile, parents were dealing with devastated kids on Christmas morning. The PlayStation 4 had been the hottest gift of the season. Over 4 million consoles sold by the end of 2014, and a huge percentage of them were opened on December 25th. The first thing new owners wanted to do was play online, download updates, add friends, access the PlayStation Store. None of it worked. Here is where it gets interesting. Lizard Squad did not just attack for fun. They were also running a business. While PlayStation Network burned, they were advertising their distributed denial of service-for-hire service called Lizard Stressor. For a small fee, anyone could rent their botnet, their network of compromised computers, to take down whatever target they wanted. A rival gamer, a business competitor, a website they did not like. Prices started at $6 for 100 seconds of attack time. Premium packages went up to $100 for 8 hours of sustained assault. Lizard Squad had turned digital terrorism into a subscription service. The Christmas attack was not just chaos. It was marketing, the most expensive, highest-profile advertisement in hacking history. "Look what we can do to Sony and Microsoft," the message implied. "Imagine what we can do to your enemies." And people were buying. In the days following Christmas, Lizard Stressor saw a massive spike in subscriptions. Hundreds of customers, maybe thousands. Each one now had the power to launch their own attacks. The tool that had crippled 77 million PlayStation accounts was available to anyone with a credit card and a grudge. Lizard Squad was democratizing cyber warfare, making it accessible and profitable. The more chaos their customers caused, the more customers they attracted. Meanwhile, Sony and Microsoft were in full crisis mode. Their security teams scrambled. Engineers worked through Christmas, trying to filter out attack traffic from legitimate users. It is harder than it sounds because distributed denial of service attacks do not break into systems, and they do not exploit vulnerabilities. They simply overwhelm capacity. You cannot just block all traffic, because then nobody can connect. You have to separate the flood from real users, in real time, while under assault. Law enforcement got involved, including the FBI, UK's National Crime Agency, and Interpol. But tracking distributed denial of service attackers is notoriously difficult. The attacks came from thousands of compromised devices, each with a different IP address and a different location. You cannot simply trace it back to one source. Lizard Squad also used additional layers of protection, including virtual private networks, Tor, and encrypted communications. They had been planning this for months. They knew how to stay hidden. And the network stayed down. One day, 2 days, gamers were furious. #PlayStation Network. Down was trending worldwide. Parents who had spent hundreds on new consoles were demanding answers and refunds. Gaming journalists were writing scathing articles about Sony's and Microsoft's security failures. How could two of the biggest tech companies in the world be brought down by hackers? Where were the safeguards, the backup systems, the disaster recovery plans? The companies were bleeding money and reputation with every hour of downtime. PlayStation Network generated hundreds of millions in revenue from digital sales, subscriptions, and microtransactions. All of it stopped. Microsoft's Xbox Live had over 48 million active users paying for Xbox Live Gold subscriptions. Those subscriptions were worthless while the service was down. We are talking about millions in lost revenue per day and the long-term damage to consumer trust. Then something unexpected happened. Kim Dotcom, the controversial founder of Mega, the cloud storage service, stepped in. Dotcom was no stranger to controversy himself. He had been arrested in 2012 for running Mega Upload, a file-sharing site accused of facilitating massive copyright infringement. He was fighting extradition to the United States, living in New Zealand and running Mega while awaiting trial. He was, in many ways, a symbol of internet freedom to some, a criminal to others. And he had a strange idea. On December 26th, he reached out to Lizard Squad on Twitter with an offer: stop the attacks, and he would give them 3,000 premium Mega vouchers, each worth 250 gigabytes of cloud storage. It was worth around $99,000 in services. Essentially, he was negotiating with cyber terrorists using cloud storage subscriptions, paying ransom to protect companies that probably despised him. Why would he do this? Dotcom later explained he just wanted the attacks to stop. He was a gamer himself, and he understood the frustration. And maybe, just maybe, he enjoyed the publicity of being the guy who saved Christmas when Sony and Microsoft could not. It was a bizarre moment, a fugitive tech entrepreneur negotiating with teenage hackers on Twitter while millions watched in real time. And incredibly, they accepted. Lizard Squad announced on Twitter that they were ending the attacks. They posted "We good," along with confirmation that they had received the vouchers. On December 26th, late in the evening, the attacks stopped. The flood of traffic ceased. Sony's and Microsoft's engineers could finally start bringing systems back online. Gradually, over the next several hours, PlayStation Network and Xbox Live began accepting connections again. By December 27th, most services were restored. Lizard Squad claimed victory and cashed in their vouchers. Kim Dotcom became an unlikely hero to frustrated gamers. And Sony and Microsoft were left explaining how they had been held hostage for more than 72 hours during the most critical gaming period of the year. But the damage was done. Sony later estimated the impact affected over 77 million accounts. That's not just 77 million people inconvenienced. That's 77 million potential customers who now question whether PlayStation Network was reliable, whether their data was safe, whether Sony could protect them. Microsoft never released exact numbers, but Xbox Live had over 48 million active users at the time. The financial losses were staggering. The humiliation was worse. Two tech giants had been brought to their knees by teenagers with botnets. And here is what really stung. It did not require sophisticated hacking. No zero-day exploits, no brilliant programming, just brute force. Volume. The digital equivalent of a mob showing up and blocking the doors. Sony and Microsoft had spent billions building their networks, millions on security, and they had been defeated by the simplest, oldest type of cyber attack in existence. The aftermath revealed even more troubling details. Security researchers who analyzed Lizard Stressor found that the botnet included over 150,000 compromised devices, home routers, internet-connected cameras, and DVRs. Most of the owners had no idea their devices were part of the attack. They had default passwords, unpatched firmware, and security vulnerabilities that Lizard Squad had exploited months earlier. Those devices were weapons, and their owners were unknowing accomplices. You would think attacking 77 million accounts and causing millions in losses would land someone in serious prison time. Here is the kicker: it barely did. The FBI eventually tracked down several Lizard Squad members. The investigation took months. They had to trace cryptocurrency payments for Lizard Stressor subscriptions, follow digital breadcrumbs through VPNs and encrypted channels, and build cases that would hold up in multiple jurisdictions. Vinny Omari was arrested in the UK in January 2015. He was charged with unauthorized access to computer systems. He initially denied involvement, then gradually admitted to participating in the attacks. But he framed himself as a minor player, just a guy helping out, not a leader. The UK courts gave him a suspended sentence and community service. He walked free. The real prize was Julius Kivimaki. The FBI, working with Finnish authorities, identified him as one of the primary operators. When they raided his home in Finland, they found multiple computers, hard drives full of stolen data, and evidence of thousands of hacking incidents. But they also found something darker: evidence of harassment campaigns, swatting attacks, and extortion schemes. Kivimaki was not just attacking gaming networks for fun. He was a prolific cybercriminal who had been operating for years. He was charged with over 50,000 counts of computer crimes, not just the PlayStation attack: credit card fraud, unauthorized access, data theft, harassment. The prosecutor called him one of the most dangerous hackers they had encountered, a 17-year-old with the capability to cause international incidents. The recommended sentence was several years in prison. His sentence was a 2-year suspended sentence. No jail time, not a single day. The Finnish court system treated him like a juvenile delinquent, not a cybercriminal who had attacked critical infrastructure affecting millions of people across multiple countries. The judge cited his age, his lack of prior convictions in Finland, and the argument that prison would harm his rehabilitation prospects. He walked free, required to check in with authorities and complete some counseling. That was it. No jail time. The international security community was outraged. Here was someone who had proven he could cripple major corporations, who had caused millions in damages, who had harassed individuals to the point of ruining their lives. And he got a slap on the wrist. The message was clear. Cybercrime, even on a massive scale, carried minimal consequences if you were young enough and in the right jurisdiction. And here's the disturbing part. Kivimaki did not stop. He did not see his suspended sentence as a warning. He saw it as permission to continue. In 2017, just 2 years after the PlayStation attack, he was linked to a massive data breach at Vastaamo, Finland's largest private psychotherapy clinic. Hackers broke into their systems and stole the records of thousands of patients. Therapy session notes, diagnoses, personal confessions, the most private, sensitive information people share with their therapists. Then they began extorting the victims. Individual patients received messages demanding ransom payments, hundreds of euros. If they did not pay, their therapy records would be published online. These were people with depression, anxiety, trauma, and addiction issues. Their deepest secrets were held hostage. Some paid, many could not afford to, and the hackers followed through on their threats. They published the records, exposing thousands of people's most vulnerable moments for anyone to read. The psychological damage was catastrophic. Multiple victims reported severe mental health crises. At least one person died by suicide, a death directly linked to the extortion and exposure. This was not a prank. This was not an attack on a gaming network. This was destroying lives. And evidence pointed back to Kivimaki and his associates. The kid who ruined Christmas for millions had graduated to ruining lives permanently. The system that let him walk free after the PlayStation attack bore some responsibility for what came next. Lizard Squad eventually fractured. The Christmas attack was their peak, their moment of maximum attention. After that, there was nowhere to go but down. Some members moved on to other things. Others were arrested for unrelated crimes. The group's Twitter account went quiet. Lizard Stressor was shut down after authorities seized the servers. The botnet was dismantled and infected devices were cleaned or replaced, but their legacy remained. They had proven that you do not need sophisticated tools or advanced degrees to cripple massive corporations. You just need determination, basic technical knowledge, and a complete disregard for consequences. They had shown that even the biggest tech companies were vulnerable, that their security could be theater, that a handful of motivated teenagers could cause more disruption than most organized crime groups. And they had done it all for attention, not money, at least not primarily, not ideology, not political statements, just to prove they could, to watch the world react, to trend on Twitter while Sony and Microsoft scrambled in the dark, to feel powerful when they probably felt powerless in their real lives. There is something uniquely modern about Lizard Squad's attack. It could not have happened 20 years ago. The infrastructure did not exist. It could not have happened 10 years ago. The culture of attention-seeking hacktivism had not fully developed. It required a perfect storm of factors: widespread adoption of internet-connected devices with poor security, botnet building tools available on dark web forums, social media platforms for real-time publicity, companies dependent on always online services, and a generation of young people who grew up understanding that online actions could have massive real-world consequences, but not necessarily believing those consequences applied to them. The Christmas PlayStation attack changed how companies think about distributed denial of service protection. It forced infrastructure upgrades, better mitigation systems, more redundancy, and content delivery networks that could absorb and filter attack traffic. Sony and Microsoft both invested hundreds of millions in security improvements after 2014. They had to. The alternative was being vulnerable to the next Lizard Squad. But it also revealed something uncomfortable. We built a connected world that is incredibly fragile, where the entertainment of millions can be switched off by kids in bedrooms. This is where critical infrastructure depends on devices that ship with default passwords such as admin and password. The line between prank and terrorism grows blurrier every year, and the legal system still has not caught up. Kivumaki's suspended sentence was not an anomaly. Most cybercriminals, especially young ones, receive minimal punishment even for massive crimes. Jurisdictional issues are complicated, and the technical evidence is hard for judges and juries to understand. Defendants are often sympathetic, young, sometimes brilliant, and there is a persistent belief that hackers can be reformed and redirected toward legitimate security work. Sometimes that is true, and some former hackers do become security researchers. But Lizard Squad proved the opposite can also happen. That leniency can be interpreted as weakness, and minimal consequences can lead to escalation, not rehabilitation. Lizard Squad wanted to be remembered. They wanted their 15 minutes of fame, and they got it. Every Christmas, when gamers boot up new consoles without issue, an invisible infrastructure works behind the scenes to prevent another attack like the one on December 25th, 2014. An entire security apparatus was built in response to teenagers who decided to ruin the holidays. Network engineers monitor traffic patterns in real time. Machine learning systems detect anomalous connection requests. Partnerships with internet service providers block attack traffic at the source. All of it exists because on December 25th, 2014, Sony and Microsoft learned they were not as secure as they thought. The gaming industry learned, but the lesson came at a price: 77 million frustrated users, millions in losses, and the knowledge that next time, attackers might want more than attention. They might want data, they might want money, they might want political influence. The blueprint is out there now, the methods are documented, and the consequences, as Lizard Squad proved, can be surprisingly manageable if you are young enough and strategic enough. They shut down PlayStation, they held gaming hostage, and most of them walked away with barely a slap on the wrist. The story of Lizard Squad is not just about a Christmas attack. It is about the fragility of our connected world, the inadequacy of our legal responses to cybercrime, and the terrifying reality that the next group might be even more ambitious, even more reckless, and just as confident they will get away with it. If you found this story as disturbing as it is fascinating, hit subscribe. Because the world of cyber warfare, digital chaos, and the kids who weaponize technology is just getting started. This was Christmas 2014. Imagine what's coming next.